Hi, this is Seema, and I am back with a new lesson on how to avoid answering a question. Now, a lot of times when we are confronted with a question, we sometimes don't want to give an answer, or sometimes we don't know the answer to that question. Now, I know between me and you, we'd like to just disappear when you are asked those questions, right? But sometimes you've got to be very tactful and avoid answering a question in the right way by saying the right things. So here are a few phrases which will help you avoid answering a question. Okay, the first one is a very common expression saying no comment. No comment can be used in two different ways. If a journalist, an annoying journalist, kind of keeps repeating a question and you don't want to give an answer, you will say no comment. So that's when a journalist is asking you a question. That's what most celebrities do, don't they? They don't want to answer a question. That's just no comment, okay? Sometimes someone is telling you something and you could say something very obvious, very critical, or very negative in response to what you're being told, but you'd rather not say anything, and that is why you would say no comment. So instead of being negative, or instead of saying something negative, saying something very obvious, or saying something critical in response to what is told to you, you would rather say no comment. For example, my friend tells me, well, Seema, my sister tells me to exercise regularly to stay fit. But now we know that her sister is so much more overweight than she is. And therefore, instead of saying the obvious like, your sister should see herself, or your sister really talks too much, I could say no comment, because we want to avoid being negative, we want to avoid being critical, or we want to avoid saying the obvious thing. Okay, the next expression or the next phrase that you may use when you are trying to avoid a question or avoid answering a question is something like, I'm not at liberty to say. Liberty basically means permission. So when you are going to say this, you are going to say this when you don't have the permission. You don't have the permission to reveal the kind of information that is being asked of you. For example, if you are a lawyer who is defending a person who was accused of murdering his wife, okay? Now, some journalist, for example, may ask you, are you going to defend Mr. Trevor, who apparently killed his wife? You are not at liberty to give that kind of information. It is professional. It is quite confidential, right? Therefore, you will say, I am not at liberty to say, okay? The next one is wait and see. A lot of times we don't want to give an answer to a question because we want the person who is asking the question to wait and see the answer for himself. You want the person to know the answer in due time. You'd rather let him find out the answer for himself. So wait and see is basically when you don't want to give the answer immediately. But you'd rather allow the person to wait and find out the answer for himself. So if you were to ask a very famous author, say J.K. Rowling, who is the author of the Harry Potter series, are you going to write your 8th book in the Harry Potter series? She does not want to give you the answer immediately, so she would just say, wait and see. Okay, so she does not want to give you the answer right now. She'd rather you just find out later. Okay, the next one is, let me get back to you. Now, there are some times when we genuinely don't know the answer. Okay, so when I don't know the answer right now, but I would like to give you the right information. So I don't know the answer right now, but I want to find out the information and give it to you at a later time. That's when you will use the phrase, let me get back to you. So you don't know the answer immediately, but you want to find the answer, but later on you want to find the answer, and then you want to give it to the person who is asking you the question. So if I am a teacher of science and if one of my students tells me, ma'am, do you think there is an alternate theory to evolution? Now, there might be an alternate theory to evolution. Well, I don't know if there could be an alternative theory to evolution. So therefore, I would like to find it out for myself first, get the right answer, and then give it to the person who asked me. That's when I will say, let me get back to you. Okay? And the next one is, I'm sorry, that's personal. That's personal. That's an S out there. Okay? Now, when you say, I'm sorry, that's not personal, you say it when someone has asked you a very inappropriate question. The question could be too personal. It could involve a very intimate topic. So if somebody asks you, are you dating Tim? You think that's a very personal, a very intimate question. You will say, I'm sorry, that's personal. You don't need to know that. Okay, you don't say that, but you just say, I'm sorry, that's personal. Some people do ask you, so what is the amount of wages you are drawing? That's kind of a personal question. You don't want to answer that, so you might just say, I'm sorry, that's personal. Okay, that's how you're going to avoid answering a personal or a question about a very intimate topic. And the next phrase is to mind your own business. Now, mind your own business is kind of rude. It sounds a little rude, I'll be honest with you. Okay, you don't always use this. In fact, I would rather you not use this a lot of times. But there are some people who are so annoying, they want to constantly ask you about questions. It's almost like they were interfering into your life. And that's when you just snap sometimes, and then you can be a little rude, I think. And then you just say, mind your own business. So for example, someone will tell you or ask you, are you going to get married to this year, or are you going to get married next year? Well, that's none of their business, right? So therefore, you get annoyed and you say, mind your own business, okay? This is a very rude way of answering a question, but sometimes you might just have to use it when someone is really annoying you and interfering in your personal life. And the next one is, I'd rather not talk about it. Now, I'd rather not talk about it is a phrase you use when you are asked a question about something unpleasant or something that is too sensitive for you. So, I did not have a good time while I was taking my math test. I think I might just flunk. But my friend over here, apparently she did well in her math test. So after we got out of class, she asks me, so Seema, how was your math test? This was a very unpleasant thing for me. I do not wish to talk about it. Therefore, I would say I'd rather not talk about it, because at this point in time, this is a sensitive thing for me. It is quite unpleasant for me to talk about right now, so I would rather not talk about it. Okay? And the next one is, I'll tell you when you are older. Okay? This sentence talks about telling someone when they grow up, obviously. So this sentence is something you will tell a child. Okay? So you will tell this to a child so that he can know about certain things that he's asking when he's of a much older age. A lot of children do ask their parents, Mommy, where do babies come from? Or how are babies made? Okay, now, for some of you who can answer that question, well, that's really a nice thing. But for some other people who don't know how to answer that question, they want to just avoid answering it, right? So they might just say, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you when you're older. You don't need to know right now. Okay, so this is a question that puts off that puts off answering it for now, because you want to tell that person about it when he gets a little bit more mature, a little bit more older. Okay, and the last one is, why do you want to know? Well, this is more of a counter question. Okay, so someone asks you a question, instead of answering it or avoiding to answer it, point blank, you will ask them or pose another question in return. You say, why do you want to know, or ask, why do you want to know, because you want to first know their reason for asking you the question, and depending on what their answer is, you may or may not answer the question. Okay, so this expression is basically used when you are trying to understand the intention behind being asked that kind of a question. Okay, well, that's it from me on this lesson on how to avoid answering questions. Well, I hope you found it informative and interesting. I'll be back with some more lessons. Until then, this is me saying goodbye.